This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from Lillipub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelcastans. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelcastans have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Brooke.
Do it again.
All right.
Episode 7. Stories about cards and story cards.
So, welcome back to this episode of the Zettelcast. Same cast of characters has shown up to participate in our challenge. I issued this week's challenge, and it was because of something I discovered in my own box. I was thumbing through looking for, something, and I found what I believe are the very first Zettelcasting cards I created. And I thought, ooh, that's kind of cool. So our challenge today was to show the first or the earliest that you could find of the cards that you created, and then the most recent as of the date that I issued the challenge. So if you wrote cards yesterday, they don't count as your most recent. But if you want to use those, that's okay too. So we don't, as Mel likes to say, nobody's going to come and yell at you if you do it differently. And then we have a second kind of bonus challenge, which is to share a story card about what I'm calling Project Roanoke. So as a quick recap, story cards are simply cards that you collect with ideas, character thoughts, bits of conversation, just some piece based on what Julianne has already shared for us and our conversations that could be part of your contribution to the story. So who wants to go first and show us your oldest card? Yay.
Okay. My oldest card dates November 19th, 2021. So I did not realize it, but I am coming right up on 3 years of Zettelcasting. I would have placed it in late January of 2022, but then I found this card. Pardon me, it's October 19th of 2021. So this is my first one. And at the time I thought I was going to be studying linguistics. And this is my card. And what it captures is a way of remembering the Spanish verb caber, which is to fit. And the way you do it, it's a memory technique where you create kind of a funny image. And this was of a bear that won't fit in a cab because he's too big for the cab. So that's how you remember caber. And so what's fascinating about this card was that this card predated any Scott's coming out with his book. So then when I got Scott's book and added the card that he asked you to make as the first one in your system, which was about Lumen and about surprise being a part of communication, boom, I got a hit with like no cards in my system at all. I only had 3 cards in my system, and I had an aha moment with my Zettelcast, so I was hooked.
That's epic. I like it. And we all learned a new word. Very good. Okay, who wants to go next and show your oldest?
I'm rifling around because I picked out the oldest one, but I didn't scan it, so now I have to grab it.
Oh, that's all
good. Right with you. So somebody else go ahead.
It's okay. We like rooting around. Go.
Yeah, I'll go. Okay, so my actual oldest card that I found was that one that I randomly picked a couple episodes ago about Hydriotaphia, the urn burial. So I actually went with one that was just like 10 days older, or 10 days newer, I mean, so I wouldn't be doing the exact same card again, which weird that just randomly pulled out several episodes ago.
Yeah.
But, so this was, I had never heard of Scott yet at this point. My date on this card is October 16th, 2021, so just slightly older than Kathleen's. But I'd never heard of Scott yet, but I had heard of Zettelkasten. I knew that they could be analog, and I was trying to figure it out, and not really succeeding. But so at the time, I was pretty much just writing down quotes from things, and I wasn't writing down any of my own thoughts because I didn't know to do that yet.
Yeah.
And so back in October of 2021, I was reading uh, the Notebooks of Malta Lorid's Brigga by Renier Rilke, whatever the rest of his
Yeah.
name is, Maria Rilke, whatever. And the quote that I wrote down, which was advice to a young writer, which I thought was really good advice, but it said, "Young man, anywhere, or young man anywhere, in whom something stirs that makes you shiver, profit by the fact that no one knows you, and if they contradict you who hold you of no account, and if they give you up entirely whom you frequent, and if they would extirpate you because of your precious thoughts, what is this obvious danger, which holds you concentrated within yourself, against the subtle enmity of fame later, which renders you innocuous by scattering you?"
Very nice.
Count on Mel to bring in the depth.
Right? That's why we invite him to the party, because he's fun.
Yeah.
So that one was the oldest, second oldest, as far as the physical cards go. I do have ones with earlier dates on them because I've been going through and finding snippets of writing and from older journals, and so those get the date of when they were originally written. So I do have something from 2016 in here, but it wasn't written on a card in 2016, so we don't have to go there.
All right. So the one that I found is from it's from November of last year, which is when I began my Zettelkasten, and I had it's actually a bunch of cards that I created because sometime earlier in the year I had this brainstorm, and this is one of the brainstorm elements, and I haven't done anything with it, but it kind of is funny for somebody who doesn't consider herself to be a story writer. It's about a story. And so it's called Code Story, and it was a product idea. And it comes from, and here I sort of wrote out, well, what's the backstory of Code Story? So Code Story has an inciting incident. In brief, that incident was the moment when it became apparent that basic questions about the current state of this application that I work on at Morgan Stanley, the basic questions were difficult to answer without analysis by a member of the squad, despite existence of artifacts. There was no accessible means to stitch together the fragmentary evidence in those artifacts to answer questions like, how does this system perform X? Why did we do that?
Yeah.
And so the idea was that stitching together all of the artifacts is like, well, we've got the code reviews, we've got the code itself, we've got comments in the code, we've got a product that we use to sort of sketch out what the requirements are, but they're all in different places. Pull those together somehow, and also have generative AI write the story from those facts. So go ahead, world. I ain't gonna build that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, take this idea.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so let me just do this. mine, it only says, can you see? Let me see. No, you cannot see that because I have on blur. Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only June. Is that June? Right, June of 24.
Uh-huh.
And it's basically, it, can you see it as Kathleen? It's what, it's what it is. It's
Oh.
all about trying to categorize and link up and understand all of the episodes that you were publishing, right? And so that came, and then this came, and that's the directory that
Oh.
shows all of the parts
Oh.
that I have. And so the story the story is going to be in category, wrong thing, category 8. That's where the Roanoke story is going to be, because I have all the way down through 7 already. Okay.
Cool.
And then I took, but that's after your date, Victoria. So
Yeah, I
but I
cheated too.
oh,
It's okay. Mel won't yell at you.
oh, okay. Well, I took the categories that you put out, Julianne, today, with
Oh,
you said 5.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. So I got mine down to 0.6 because I added the visuals that I'm trying to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
very
Okay, no?
cool.
Yeah.
So
Very
Deb,
cool.
you
I
turned your
approve.
camera off.
What?
Yeah,
Oh, I
we
did?
lost your vision.
There you are.
Sorry about that.
There you are.
Okay. Yeah. I was supposed to
Cool.
have just been turning off the blur, but anyhow. Okay.
So for me, I'm gonna have to fall in line with Deb and how she started, because when I started, I was watching Scott's videos, and the first thing that came to me was, this will work for my novel. And so being the this is so embarrassing. Being the extreme plot nerd that I am, I couldn't make cards without knowing where I was going. So the first thing I did was this sheet where I'm assigning the number. 7110 is my female, 7120 is my male. So I had to know, where do these characters go? So I sketched it out for myself. And then while that was happening, I ordered a pack of colored 3x5 cards, because that was before I knew that I would want to use 4x6. I just ordered what I could because it was the fastest thing I could get here. And so using that color coded system, these were my first 4 character cards, and they're punched so that they go in where that list was. They didn't go into my box until later, but those were my first 4 character cards. And it's funny because at almost the same time, like within a day or two, I was thinking about how I could use that as a way to know where my story parts were in my Scrivener, which is the writing tool that I use. And so the other thing that I did is I did a code key with all of my colors and my Scrivener icons so that I could find this stuff when I got into the digital tool. So even at that early, those first start stages, I knew I could use the note card system to completely track everything digital that I was doing, and I committed to it and never looked back. That was about, this all happened, I couldn't find anything with an actual date on it, but I would say right around a year and a half ago, somewhere in that neighborhood, I think. I'd have to go back and watch my videos to be certain, but if my Swiss cheese memory is remotely close, about a year and a half ago.
Very cool.
Okay, so who wants to do the newest?
I guess I'll continue in that same order.
Okay.
My newest card doesn't have a number because I made it for my group that I'm doing with the minimalist Zettelkasten, where I'm taking people through the fewest number of steps to get a fully working Zettelkasten that's a real Zettelkasten, not a toy. And so it doesn't have a card number yet because that's the next thing I'm teaching. So, but the card is from Dan Sullivan's The Gap and the Gain book. And the note is that measuring against an ideal means you always fail because ideals are unreachable. So then my
Nice.
response to that is, so ideals make good stars to navigate by, but not good measuring sticks.
Excellent.
And my tagline is strive for ideals, don't measure by them.
I like that.
Love it.
And that was on your date.
Yeah.
Mel, do you want to go with your most recent?
Well, I'm not sure what my most recent is, which is embarrassing, but um, all of my most recent main cards are notes that I've taken on my reading recently for my newsletters, which has been pretty wide ranging. I know I did a lot on the nature of zero as a number and a concept. And I am not entirely certain where I put those cards. I've been carrying them around and like writing with them, and they are somewhere, but they're not in my box. I can tell you that. And
Awesome.
they are. I will find them at some point, but not today.
Trust the process.
Just make sure they're not in the laundry.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
That would be dangerous, but I never put them in my pocket, so I'm okay. I think.
That's crazy.
So mine, I don't know whether I'm going out of order. If I
That's
am,
okay.
apologize. So mine is a main card that I made from one of the sources, one of the references for the Roanoke project, and the book is Jane McGonigal's Reality is Broken. And again, the purpose for this is that the ancestors have a view about games and life. And this is pertinent to that. So Jane McGonigal is a futurist and a game designer, and she has in this book several examples of games that she has created out in the world. And the one that I chose here is called Happiness Hacking. Well, no, actually, the name of the game is Cruel to be Kind. And my tagline for this is Happiness Hacking. It's positive psychology as a game mechanic. And so what she talks about in the chapter where she's introducing this game is the fact that positive psychology has a lot of very well researched techniques that make you feel good when you do them, but you can't make people do them, and you can't do it for them. And so examples are write in a journal every day all the things that you appreciate, or perform random acts of kindness. And everybody, and it's apparently been proven, according to her, according to like Martin Seligman, who is a researcher that I know that Kathleen, you are familiar with. People do feel better when they do these things. But what she says is in a cynical culture, these happiness increasing behaviors feel hokey and inauthentic. And so the Cruel to Be Kind game kind of twists this a little bit. So the way that it works is that, let's say we're all playing the Cruel to Be Kind game, but the way that you sign up to play the game, you don't know who's playing. We're all strangers. So everybody who is playing the game is a stranger. And you are meant to stealthily and sneakily perform a random act of kindness on one of your opponents in the game. But you can't know whether they are an opponent or not. If you do perform this random act of kindness, you've gotcha, right? She said, so she referred to it as, where did she put it? Something like benevolent assassination. You get points, I would get points for sneaking up on Deb and saying, my God, I've got to get a hat like that. I just love it. But I don't know her, right? But the thing is, because you are performing these random acts of kindness on total strangers, it's quite possible you're going to perform it on somebody who's not playing in the game, and you're going to make them feel great. And so instead of collateral damage, you've got collateral benefit.
That's awesome. Very cool.
So yeah, so that it's part of the project. But one of the things I'm loving about this project and about this podcast and the challenges that we issue to each other, it kind of helps me get things out of my head and onto the card and sharing it. I read that book in 2021.
Oh,
That's cool. That's very cool. Deb, did you go?
No, I didn't. I was thinking to myself, I'm going to have to follow that. Okay.
Yeah, I know, right? So I'm like,
because I don't have because I actually spoke on my latest card before when I was talking about my beginning card.
oh yeah.
When I was speaking about the categories that I broke it down into by following Julianne's breakdown of so I have 8.1 is the character, 8.2 location, etc., etc., etc.
got it.
And so I don't have a main card.
Yeah.
Yet.
That's okay.
I don't have a main card, and I have to also confess that I'm behind on my minimalist homework.
It's okay. It's self-paced.
That's
Okay,
right.
yeah.
That's right. No, there's no deadlines.
I'm the only one with a deadline.
Yeah, right. I don't need another one. Okay, so for me, let's see. The bib card that goes with this it's a book called This New Ocean: The Story of the First Space Age. And I ended up there because I was thinking about the Roanoke story. I was trying to discover, just in my own wanderings, what I wanted to contribute to the story and what that might look like. So, like you do, I just started wandering around in my fascination, which anybody that knows anything about me and the novel that I'm writing, I have a fascination with old manuscripts. So I'm like, all right, there's a piece there, put a pin in that. And I ran across this book, and this book, for who knows how these things line up, they just do. It led me to something called the Sibiu manuscript, which is a manuscript that's in the Romanian National Archive now. It's 450 pages, and it was drawn by Conrad Haas, who we believe is one of the very earliest he wasn't an inventor because he didn't exactly make it, but one of the first visionaries of a proper multi-stage rocket.
Oh.
So that's what this manuscript is full of. And so that led me, which I'll save that for my story card, but where that led me was to something called Anna's Archive, which is a shadow library. They're basically a search engine for mirror shadow libraries, and their goal is to catalog all of the books in existence. That's the goal of this site. To date, they have like multiple millions of books cataloged. So it's rumored that they have a second copy of the Sibelius manuscript cataloged there, but they can't find it. So, okay, we have ourselves a story heading here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my most current card is I got the book, This New Ocean, to read about the genesis of building the first rockets, which this manuscript is dated between 1550 and 1570, depending on whether you're looking at the writing or the parchment. And then, of course, that led to where can I see, has this been photographed and can I see it? And that took me down the hole of the Shadow Library, who supposedly has a copy, but we don't know. So that's my most recent card, too.
Awesome. One thing that I meant to say about the card that I did, the happiness hacking card, when I went to find out what its parent should be,
Oh.
I found it, the parent that I was spoiled for choice.
Oh.
And so I ended up choosing one of them, which is about emotional resonance. And it comes from the Candace Pert book on the fact that the emotional mechanism uses vibration. And so I was thinking, well, that kind of contributes to the whole notion of we resonate, we're in discord, we're in harmony, his vibe, right? You know, there's something actually going on there, perhaps. So I chose that one, but I had 3 perfectly other good ones. And the thing that was really fun is that it's a complete cross-section. The one that it chose is in my 2000s, but there's one from the 1000s, the 4000s, and the 5000s.
Wow. That's
Did you make all the
awesome.
links?
Hmm?
Did you create all the links?
Yes, I created a directory card.
Yeah. Ah.
Very cool. See, those are advanced maneuvers. That stuff still kind of scares me, but I'm getting there. Awesome. Okay, so that brings us to our second challenge, which is, does anyone have a card, a story card, related or unrelated to what we've already talked about, specific to the Roanoke story?
I didn't write mine out. I typed it.
Oh,
That's
Uh,
okay.
yeah.
yeah. So, and I put it in the same folder as the other cards, story cards. After I found out what a story card is, right? So I got that. At least I think I have it. So so how do we handle? Just read it out or what?
Yeah, just read it.
Okay, so um, the working title of this is Becoming Became, comma, number 1. Okay, Becoming Became, number 1. So you can have all kinds of becomings that, that became, number 2, number 3, number 4, on and on. Okay, and the setting in this case is the basement of a 2-family suburban home in anywhere New York or wherever state, city, country, population 193,000, in a vibrant, diverse neighborhood. The character is a central female protagonist or a close relative somewhere in time. The conflict is authenticity is being strangled by cluttered surroundings. And the what if part is, what if in a last ditch, all out effort to declutter her life and her surroundings, she finds a trove of impeccable boxes and beaded boards. She thinks she hears them.
Knocked it out of the park.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Awesome.
and the other part that I just thought of about 20 minutes ago was that in the once she solves the first, once she interacts with the first box or board, she finds that the inside is like Doctor Who's um
It's like a TARDIS.
Oh,
It's bigger on the inside.
that's bigger on the inside.
Awesome. I love it.
Me too.
That's good. That's very good.
So I called it
Excellent.
8.2, the basement.
Cool. All right, who's next on the block?
I
I'll
can do
go.
it. Oh, no.
Okay. Well, I actually have 4 cards in front of me. The first one is sort of um, foundational information. So the first one will actually go into the main Zettelkasten box with links to it, but it sets where I'm going. So this is from when I studied linguistics for a year or year and a half in college. And in that course of study, I learned the difference between a pidgin and a creole. And a pidgin is a rudimentary language that is developed and learned by adults. It's usually very simple, nouns, verbs, some adjectives maybe, but not a whole lot of connections, not a lot of grammar. It is very, very basic, get the point across. It develops usually when there's different languages that come in contact and they come up with some sort of rudimentary language that they can communicate with each other. Well, what happens when you have children who learn a pidgin as their first language is they turn it into a real language. They develop all of the connecting tissue, they develop expressiveness, nuance, and that's called a creole, is when it starts to become a real language because children have learned it as their first language. And children just have that, they're primed to learn languages. So and a really excellent example is American Sign Language. Probably other sign languages too, but this is the one that I know because it was developed with adults by adults. And so in the first phases of it, it was very simplistic, just, gestures and signs, but it wasn't really a real language yet. But when it began to be taught to deaf children, they developed grammar and, everything to make it it's a real language. It's not just English translated into signs, hand gestures. It's its own language. And over the years and generations, as deaf children have learned these, the sign language, it gets more and more complicated and complex and nuanced. So that was my starting point. That's sort of the necessary information. So I was thinking about Grandpa's pattern / design language. I kind of think that maybe it was a pidgin. He probably didn't grow up speaking this design language. It was probably very well thought out. He probably put a lot of thought into it and a lot of design, but it wouldn't have been a living language yet. And I said, perhaps part of the purpose of this planet is to allow the pattern design language to evolve and come alive as generations learn it as their native language. But of course, the nature of living things is that they can be unpredictable. maybe some of the directions taken are considered wrong by some of the founders. And then I sort of went in a slightly different attack here, but I think it's related. But so in the story treatment, there's mention of children learn to speak, and they they have to speak occasionally for ceremonial purposes. Well, I know how hard it is to get kids to do anything manually if they have a computer in front of them or a phone, right? If you want a kid to learn math on paper, you have to take the calculator and the phone and everything else away from them, because otherwise they won't do it. So I'm thinking, how on earth are you going to force kids to talk out loud if they can talk instantly mind to mind? They're not going to learn it. So I was thinking that perhaps getting attached, connected up to the hive mind, for a better word, is something that happens as a coming of age. Like you don't get to join the hive mind until you've reached a certain level of maturity and learned how to speak and learned how to be an individual. And then you can become part of it. And so I would think that in a society like that, wanting to have solitude would be considered like childish. It's something that adults don't do anymore, right? It was appropriate for children, but not for adults. Or, it could even be like perverse, like signs of some sort of weird perversion, not wanting to be connected.
Yeah.
So all of that leads into my idea for a character, which is somebody who, due to some congenital defect or something, was not able to connect until a much older age than typical. Haven't worked out the details yet. And because of that, they never quite got used to being connected, and they actually like being an individual and thinking their own thoughts, and how they deal with that. Excuse me. So that's everything.
That's fantastic. Wow.
Very amazing.
Well, and that explains why Kathleen's child has a Zettelkasten.
Ah.
Handwriting it out. Just saying. Now
Well,
I
mine-
understand why people get addicted to role-playing games.
Yeah, yeah. These are both of these entries are super in depth. Mine is quite small. It's a little detail to add to the picture. Now, of course, we all know from Julianne's wonderful setup diagram that there's something called the Rosetta floor. And that was what enabled them to decipher the language of the ancients. Well, in my vision of this thing, there's this beautiful Rosetta floor, but there's just this simple tile walkway all the way around the Rosetta floor that just looks like they're simple ceramic tiles, until it's discovered that you're walking on lids of boxes. And many of these tiles, if you can lift the lid, and there's stuff inside the floor, and there's way more information on the walkway around the Rosetta than is in the boxes. But if you didn't know the Rosetta, the boxes would be utterly incomprehensible. And even with the boxes, what's in the boxes is pretty hard to comprehend and put together.
This is what she calls a tiny detail.
Yeah. It's like a three-dimensional Zettelkasten. You
Yeah.
figure it out. The walkway around is a Zettelkasten. You've got the aisle, the north, south, east, different aisles, then the spot within it. So it's a Zettelkasten of objects.
That's awesome.
That's why the little girl has a box that has a mixture of cards and objects.
Interesting.
as you were starting to describe this and you had the border around things, I immediately got a picture of the tiny little cartoons that are in Mad Magazine that are in the margins.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It could be.
Yeah.
They just look like they're cute.
Yeah.
Maybe what's in the boxes are playing pieces for the different games. You know, I mean, if we define a top hat and
One dog.
Then we'll know. Then we'll know what happened to the founders. It was a Monopoly game that went bad.
That's right. That's right. Wow, this is awesome. This is just amazing. So I guess I'll bring it home. So after I went down the road of trying to figure out how I wanted to approach this, then immediately, I mean, almost immediately, as soon as I read about the manuscript in the Shadow Library, my whole head was just full of Grandpa. So my questions were, my card is kind of a card of questions because that's always where I start. So I have that the only copy in existence of this manuscript is rumored to be in this Shadow Library. And my questions are, who put it there? Will there be a hard copy discovered, or will that somehow play in? But the most important piece is that the reason it's in there in the first place is because Grandpa had a hand in it. We don't know what that is yet, but he somehow has a hand in both the provenance and where this manuscript has ended up. And I see it as one of his early kind of liking to be mischievous and hide things, sort of in plain sight, but not really. I really have a good sense of how he might think this was really funny. So that's where that thread is going. I think, I don't know, part of me thinks that either he knew Conrad Haas, he somehow channeled him, somehow he had a hand in how this object came to be, and he's being very mischievous about how he allows people to figure this out and why it's important.
Very nice.
And that's where we are.
So the cards that I made are pretty simple. And we have chatted about this over the weekend. So I made a card for the design language because it's going to be a big thing. And I'm calling it HIPS for hiding in plain sight.
Nice.
And one of the elements that came out is that, well, what are we going to call this lost colony? And the name for the lost colony in the language of HIPS is "Nice try!" exclamation point. And Deb, your response on Lilypub was exactly where I was going, because there are it's probably all over the world, but there are these whimsical town names that you hear about in the United States that are just like, oh, somebody had a sense of humor, and as I was just putting that one down there, the editor was going, oh, that's going to be too obvious. Oh, that's going to be too obvious. And the thing is, we won't know what's too obvious, I feel, until we've thrown everything at it all along the way, and then we come back and edit. But the editor is banished for this. So there are going to be a lot of the goofy things here that will be charming to us, but might not survive. But I think that we should just absolutely go hog wild, because
Absolutely.
I could imagine a lot of these things being, it's like, I've been staring at that all my life and I just thought that was a dad joke, but it actually is meaningful. And some of those are going to be spoilers. So, yeah, I've just started collecting a bunch of them and we'll be sharing them with y'all.
Wow.
Cool. No, I completely agree. I think having the everything but the kitchen sink zero draft is the best way for us to really hone in on what we want the main thing to look like. So I totally agree.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention that in this week's Fusion Writing, the zero draft is what Victoria brings to us. So you're going to love the map and compass when they come out.
Super.
Good stuff.
Maybe people should be
Well-
joining Lily Pub, you know?
Right?
Yes.
Where's that note card?
Yes, here we are. This is where we are. We're at lilypub.org, and we have something new that's exciting now. If you go to lilypub.org, you'll have the opportunity to sign up for a mailing list. And when you get signed up, the first thing that you'll get is a link to a shared directory on Google Drive that has all of our foundation documents that are not spoilers. We're not going to put any spoilers in there for you, but you'll be able to see what we're working on and follow along as the development goes. Now, if you actually want to become a Lilligan, if you want to join lilypub.org, you have a gathering space now where you can chat up the story with your friends over in Lilypub and talk about what's going on in the story, make suggestions to the creators of where you'd like to see the story go. And then there's a post section where the Zettelcast will occasionally make posts to share with you things that maybe don't get out into the whole wide world or don't get out into the world until the following week. You get instant access to them. And we'll even have occasional private Zoom calls, kind of like this, picture our group, but then you getting to be a member of it and talking to the Zettelcast as a part of the Zoom call. So think about it, lilypub.org if you want to join us, lilypub.org if you just want to be on the mailing list. Either way.
Yay.
Yay.
Awesome. All right. Anybody want to add anything before we wrap?
Well, who's gonna lead us so fearlessly next week?
And again.
I haven't had a turn.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yay.
So let me make the commitment of coming up with something.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, because if you're gonna be a part of something, you have to contribute, right? You have to.
That's right. Issue us a challenge.
Yeah,
Yay.
yeah. So, okay, so publication of the challenge is usually a Tuesday or something. What is it?
Yeah, just a few
Yeah.
days ahead.
Okay. And to
Yeah.
carve out some time in this craziness that I call my life and figure it out.
Amen.
It's an honor.
We're great.
Okay.
Well, as always, it was awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for leading us this week, Victoria.
Yep.
Bye.
See ya.